So far, by burning coal and gas and oil, humans have increased the temperature of the planet approximately 1 degree Fahrenheit. That's been enough to start melting everything that's frozen, to spin the seasons out of kilter, to change cycles of rainfall and drought. IPCC Working Group 1 on Basic Science found this February that without dramatic efforts to reduce carbon emissions, we can expect further increases in temperature of between 4 and 8 degrees Fahrenheit in the course of this century. How much is that? At 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the world would be far warmer than in human history or in human prehistory, perhaps warmer than any time since the start of primate evolution. It is important to understand that this temperature rise is not if things turn out badly or in some worst-case scenario. It's exactly what we can expect unless we're able to keep carbon concentrations in the atmosphere from doubling. IPCC Working Group 2, which studied impacts of climate change and reported in early April, found that change even at the lowest end of that range, at 5 degrees, would lead to widening droughts in Europe, the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, the American Southwest, and Mexico, and to flooding that would decimate island and delta nations. This is the latest science. Malaria is a good place to start. Malaria-bearing mosquitoes are begun to appear in places where high altitudes and concomitant cold temperatures previously prevented their outbreak. As early as the year 2000, the World Health Organization was already attributing a not hypothetical 6% of malaria deaths in many regions to climate change. Let's take another example, an even more devastating mosquito-borne disease, dengue fever. It is increasing rapidly as the temperature rises for 2 reasons. 1, the geographic range of Aedes aegypti mosquito, the carrier, is limited by freezing temperatures. As those diminish, there has been steady spread. 2, warmer temperatures reduce the adult size of the mosquito. Since smaller adults must feed more frequently to develop their eggs, warmer temperatures boost the incidence of double feeding and increase the chance of transmission. Note the dates that I'm going to use in the following. In Mexico, dengue cases have increased 4-fold in the last 6 years. In El Salvador, the increase is 20 times over that period. In Paraguay, the increase is 6-fold over last year. Is this attributable to climate change? Let's turn again to The Economist magazine, Mr. Lomborg's former partner in his Copenhagen Consensus project. In a story printed 2 weeks ago, it began its account this way. Fueled by climate change, dengue fever is on the rise again throughout the developing world, particularly in Latin America. By the way, and I can testify to this by way of personal experience since I contracted dengue in Dhaka's first big outbreak while researching development issues in Bangladesh, it is a truly devastating disease and very often fatal, especially for the youngest, the oldest, and the poorest. It cannot be prevented with bed nets. Aedes aegypti is diurnal. And here's the real point. Not only does global warming make dengue fever worse, endemic dengue or malaria or cholera or salmonella or flooding or any of the other warming-exacerbated medical problems in turn makes the entire healthcare delivery system worse by overwhelming it with new cases. Take Malaysia. According to data published in July of last year, 1 dengue case costs 1/5 of the country's per capita GDP. The cost per patient is equivalent to 53 days of lost economic output. The clinics fill up, the same clinics that are supposed to be treating TB and HIV/AIDS and all the other things. If we follow the Lomborg path and do very little, then greenhouse gases, which have risen 70% since 1970, will rise as much as another 90% by 2030. But we don't need to do little or nothing. Instead, we now have the tools at hand necessary to cut emissions. And if we cut emissions, we will sharply reduce the temperature at which the world settles. We can't stop global warming, but we may be able to hold it short of the catastrophic with truly quick and inspired action. We can no longer make the excuse that we need to wait for more science. The one thing I'd like to be able to invest in, because I see Andy and Jake out in the audience tonight, is their Bright Card credit card that's going to use, instead of giving you airline miles, will give you carbon offsets as your bonus.